Hello there, my name is Pauline Cordiner and I am a storyteller from Aberdeen in the northeast of Scotland. So welcome ladies and gentlemen, loons, quines and abdy else. Now, I did a post a wee while ago called about the Rainy Man, and in that I told you that I never wrote poems, which is mostly true, but here's another one that I did. This is also one that I did when I was volunteering at Archaeolink, and it's about the Iron Age, when the Romans came up and they tried to settle in some parts of Scotland. They didn't stay for long for various reasons. I won't go into that. And this is called The Tale of Little Dan. I'll tell you the story as best as I can. For there once lived a boy who was called Little Dan, and he lived with his dad, a strapping, strong man, in a house with his mum and their goat and his gran. He was called Little Dan because he was small, and his only true wish was to grow very tall. In fact, Little Dan was just 3'3" and only came up to his huge father's knee. Happy they were, happy all four, till a big smelly Roman turned up at the door. "I'm a big smelly Roman, I'm collecting tax. You owe 4 back payments, so I'm taking that axe." "No, no," cried Dan, "we need it for wood." And he squared himself up, as tall as Dan could, and he grabbed for his staff and he swung it around, but he tripped himself up and he fell to the ground. The Roman just laughed and watched poor Dan fall. "Do you think you could stop me? You're far too small." The axe he grabbed, and he left with his treasure, and he spat on poor Dan, just for good measure. Poor Dan, he felt ever so grim, and thought, if I'd been bigger, I could have beaten him. So he made a decision right there and then that no one would ever push him round again. He'd grow, and he'd grow until he was a giant, and in the face of those Romans, well, he'd be defiant. I need to be big so those Romans won't laugh. Well, how big is that? The height of my staff. So day after day he ate bowlfuls of stew. But to his great disappointment, he still never grew. He stretched from the doorframe, he stretched out in bread, but he seemed to have shrank to 3'2" instead. Each day his height with the staff he'd compare, standing on tiptoe as tall as he'd dare. But Dan never grew, and he couldn't tell why, and poor little Dan would sit down and cry. They were worried about him, his mum, gran and dad, for poor little Dan was incredibly sad. So they thought late one night, his mum, dad and gran, until they came up with a fantastic plan. If we can't make Dan taller, then we'll make his staff smaller. So each month, to make him think that he grew, they'd chop from his staff an inch or two. At last Dan was happy, what with him growing tall, unaware he was small and had not grown at all. "I'll thump him, I'll kick him with my staff, I will whack. Just you wait till that Roman comes back." At last, one morning, with the sun shining bright, Dan checked his staff, and in his delight, he punched the air, he cried out, "Hooray!" For he and his staff were now equal in height. But sadly, dear reader, or listener, as you and I know, it takes more than a few months for a wee lad to grow. But Dan didn't know this. He thought it was great. He seemed to have grown to at least 5'8". It was a cold winter's morning when the Roman came back, with the taxes of many on a horse in a sack. Dan saw him coming from the top of the hill, and he said to himself, "Oh, I'll get him, I will." He crept down the hillside, leaving the sheep, seeing his chance for revenge on that creep. And from way up there he felt big, strong and tall. For down there the Roman looked terribly small. He sneaked down the hillside as the Roman came nearer, and little Dan's plan became clearer and clearer. He hid behind the fence from where he could jump him, and with his big staff he'd whap him and thump him You know what's coming, dear listeners. You're clever. But Dan didn't know he was tiny as ever. He thought he was massive. He thought he did truly, and that he'd tower above the head of this bully. And so when Dan jumped out, armed with his staff, the Roman leered down and gave out a laugh. The Roman just boomed, "Is that boy with his stick?" And he knocked poor Dan over and gave him a kick. Poor Dan. Just like that, again, he'd been beaten, despite all the bowlfuls of stew that he'd eaten. Nothing had gone the way that he'd planned, and why had he shrunk? He could not understand. The Roman went round the farm and filled up his sack, all the time laughing at poor Dan's attack. He grabbed their cauldron, he grabbed their poor goat, and he leant over Dan, all smug, just to gloat. "Do you think you could stop me? You're not a man." And he stepped over poor little trembling Dan. He laughed in his face and he went on his way, for many poor folk had taxes to pay. And as his goat was dragged off and bleated goodbye, poor little Dan let out a great sigh. "I'm still so small and I can't tell why." And he did what I do. He started to cry. Dan cowered in a ball as the Roman set off and turned round from his horse and started to scoff. "I'll be a hero," he said, "when I get back to my legion. I'm the best tax collector in this whole great region." But his horse kept on going as he cackled with glee and followed the path beneath a great tree. A bough knocked the Roman right on his head, and he fell from his horse and he cried out instead. "Ouch!" cried the Roman. A loud crack was the sound as his helmet fell off. He was knocked to the ground. Little Jan looked up with tears still in his eyes, and he saw his big chance, for Dan was quite wise. He got to his feet and ran very quick to the Roman still carrying his little stick. "This'll teach you, you bully," little Dan said, and he threw what was left of the staff at the Roman's head. It knocked him unconscious, and he lay there unmoving, and the goat bleated loudly, like it was approving. He tied up the Roman before he could come to, and he stuck out his tongue. Well, wouldn't you? He went to the horse and pulled off the sack. The horse didn't care, it was having a snack. The sack, it was filled with all kinds of treasure. And he took their stuff back. He took it with pleasure. "Ah," said Dan, once he'd finished looking, "that helmet'll do for some fireside cooking. And give me that cauldron, it belongs to my mum." And Dan's goat bit the Roman right on the bum. They returned from the market, his mum, Dad and Gran, and the first thing they saw, well, it was little Dan with a horse and a Roman, all tied up too. And poor Dan's mum fainted. Well, I would do too. His dad scooped him up, kissing his head, and he looked at the Roman saying, "Dan, is he dead?" And Granny cried out, "There's my little man!" And she whooped and she whistled, like any toothless crone can. So before he woke up, they painted him blue, just so the Romans would have a wee clue that if anyone else came looking for taxes, they'd come head to head with Celts wielding axes. With a bucket of water, Dan's dad woke the Roman, and Granny cried out, "It's time for you to go, man." And battered and bruised, he stumbled away, swearing he'd never collect taxes again. No way. And what became of our little Dan? Well, he stayed in the farmhouse with his mum, Dad and Gran, and as he grew older, he grew and he grew and became their wise chieftain. Well, wouldn't you? So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that. That was the story of little Dan, which I wrote, I don't know, maybe 18 years ago. So thank you very much for listening again. If you like stories, please follow me at Pauline Cordiner, a Scottish storyteller, on Facebook. I've also got a web page, there's our YouTube page with more videos, and also follow Tag Team Tales on Facebook. And if you like stories from all around the world, please have a look at the World Storytelling Cafe. You can have a look at my videos there as well, and any donations that go into my hat are being donated to the Cafe Clock Storytellers in Morocco. Thanks again. Tune in sometime for another video. Bye-bye.